This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. Ever feel like you're being pushed or pulled in more directions than you can even begin to process? When life demands more than you can give at work, in your relationship, or at home, Talkspace can help. Talkspace provides convenient online access to therapy, psychiatry, and mental health support. Just answer a few questions online and Talkspace will match you with a licensed provider in less than 2 days, with some even offering same-day appointments. Chat with a therapist over live video, audio, or messaging so you can get mental health support that fits your lifestyle and schedule. No taking time off work, no commuting to an office, and no waiting room. Just support that meets you right where you are. Best of all, Talkspace is covered by most major insurance plans with an average copay of $15. Get space when you need it with Talkspace. And now you can get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com. That's Talkspace.com.
Emotionally unavailable.
All right. Well, welcome, Liana, to Emotionally Unavailable. We were just shit bitching before we were hitting record. Okay. So, audience, this is my new friend that I told you all that I did a live with and I got restricted for vaping on. Who knew? Who knew that TikTok was outside? I was like, I'm pretty sure I just witnessed Perez Hilton doing some crazy shit on here for a full 30 minutes. And immediately I vape and it's like, whoa, you are engaging in a harmful activity, which I won't disagree with, but whatevs. So anyway, I felt so terrible about that. It did seem to like repair itself before the end. Like the notification I had went away. Like, I was like, okay, I won't vape. But that's so stupid. Anyway, irrelevant. But I was like, oopsie, I feel really bad. But, okay, so we didn't really have anything super specific to talk about. But I remember you said you were on Rena's podcast. I'm not making that up. Okay. And
in February.
Then I saw a couple posts from you that I was like, shit, Leanna's been on a little journey. And so I've been wanting to kind of like get to know what that looked like for you since I saw those posts. But
yeah,
also you have been listening to the show like steadily. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I've been telling everybody about it too. Like I was just having a conversation with my neighbor earlier and we were talking about like the intersection of science and spirituality. And I was like, you need to listen to Melissa's show. So
thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for putting stuff out there because I think people need to see, our society has created a lot of skeptics and people need to see real people living real lives, doing real things like being a therapist and whatever, and using these tools and techniques that have been around for literally forever, for like all of existence until like now, because we've been blocked from it, right? We've been hidden from it. It's been cloaked and veiled. I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole quite yet, but we need real life examples out there of how do you bring woo into your corporate 9-to-5 job. Because I've been doing that for the last 4 or 5 years now. And it's interesting. And there are days where I'm like, what am I doing? And then there's other days where I have these conversations throughout the course of my regular day that fill me like that, like the way something like this fills me. And so I know that I'm on the right path. I know that I'm doing the things that are supposed to be. Exactly where I'm supposed to be. Of course I am. Even if I wasn't where I was supposed to be, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And then it's my chance to figure out where I want to go next. But yeah, I've been on quite a journey since really COVID. I think that was a turning point for a lot of people in a lot of different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it forced me to, one, be at home, which was not a thing that I had done a lot of.
Yeah.
And two, slow down. And then I got diagnosed with Graves' disease and I ended up having to have a total thyroidectomy. And I lost my voice for 3 months after that, which was completely insane. I work in sales and
oh my God.
I literally talk a lot. Just in general, it's just sort of my person, it's like my whole personality is.
Yeah, you're a double Virgo, right?
No, Taurus. I'm like a whole bunch of Taurus.
Right. I knew it was Earth.
But I am a Virgo North Node.
Okay.
Virgo North Node. Yeah. And so I'm interested to see like what this Virgo season brings me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So losing my voice, finding yoga, finding a little bit more connection to just everything that is everything. I mean, gosh, there's so many things to say. I started really leaning into the laughing, and I remember listening to a Mel Robbins podcast, and she's like, figure out the thing that like you love the most and then find out something new about it. And so I looked up something new about laughing. I don't remember how I Google searched or whatever. And I found the American Laughter Championship. And so I was like, oh, I could do that. And so I signed up for that. And
No way!
Yeah. So I was in the American Laughter Championship in 2024. I don't remember if Rena joined in on that. Her and I had, think it just started talking or not too long after that. Again, we caught back up. But anyway, so that was really super interesting. That was my first exploration into laughter yoga. And that's when I decided that I didn't particularly like laughter yoga. But it was okay because it gave me a space to find my own thing and figure out what I did like.
Right.
And then just this last year, about a year ago, like right now, I started bleeding and I didn't stop. And I finally ended up at my doctor, and I was actually, interesting was I actually filmed a podcast like middle of that. And I was like, I don't even really know, like, I was like, I'm kind of going through this health thing right now. I don't really know what it is yet, but like I, could kind of sense like something was coming, but I didn't really get into that because it was mostly that podcast. I was really talking a lot about my journey of like losing my voice and coming into that sort of spiritual place. Anyway, I ended up having to have a hysterectomy in November. It was all quite quick from August into November. And then
3 months.
Now I've been healing from that and just coming through that journey of, another surgery, another like very like life-changing surgery. And so it's been really interesting to just watch the parallels between the first surgery, we'll call it, and this surgery. And then also realizing kind of coming through this mother wound, my own and my whole lineage, and what sort of this motherhood journey has been for me. Again, seeing a lot of parallels. I'd had a miscarriage with before I got pregnant with before I got pregnant with my son, I had a miscarriage that was horribly mishandled by everybody on my medical team. And I ended up getting their whole office shut down in the state of Maryland and producing medicine for some of them. It was a whole situation. But, I remember going through that and that I didn't give myself a lot of space to grieve and to heal through that. And so when I was probably like day 14 of bleeding, of like day 18 before I actually got to a doctor. And I was like at my desk one day and I couldn't focus. I couldn't work. I was like, why can't I? And I was like, because you've been bleeding for 2 weeks, Liana, go lie down. Like,
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is like exactly what I didn't do for 6 months healing from this miscarriage. I never stopped going to work. I even went back to work after. Like I never told anybody or did anything. And because there's so much taboo around having those conversations and like what you talk about with your grief, like just talking about grief or like other people's grief or like how close do we get to this? You don't tell anybody at the beginning of your pregnancy that you're pregnant.
Right.
Because you gotta like be
right.
And then I had a friend at work. They had like their baby shower and then like 3 days later had a miscarriage, So it's like
I had situations like that too, because I had 2 miscarriages before Charlie. And
oh, wow.
Like not very many people knew that I was pregnant. And then I found myself like really wanting to be like, I just had a miscarriage. And well, with the first one, it was so unexpected to be pregnant. And I told several people, and then we went on a trip to Argentina and I miscarried there, which was terrifying because I was like, what if I don't, complications and whatever. Sure. And I remember I ended up passing most of it in a train station in Argentina, and I had been bleeding pretty heavily. And then after that, it was like normal, whatever. Like I was bleeding, but it didn't scare me anymore. But I remember the whole plane ride home writing so much in a journal because I wanted to blog about it or something. And Brian was kind of like, I mean, you're not going to post that, are you? And I'm like, well, I mean, I wanted to, but it did make me think. And so then I never did. And then I had the second miscarriage, and like with the first one, the people who knew I told, and I was met with a lot of insensitivity. Like just, it was rude, really. Like people just didn't care. And then with the second one, I hardly told anyone. And then I also had a grandma who was like a bitch. And so every child that I've had, my younger brother has gotten a girl pregnant around the same time. So like my oldest, there's a child 2 months younger than him. The second child was 3 weeks younger than Jake. And then he got his current wife who they've been together forever, pregnant when I had my first miscarriage. And then because she was still postpartum and all that, by the time I got pregnant with Charlie, they that was not on their radar. But then the mere talk of me starting fertility treatments after Charlie, another baby. But anyway, my grandma died before that. Well, she may have been around for that last one. Yeah, she was, but not for very long. But she was even when I was trying to get pregnant with Jake and was taking fertility drugs, she was like, well, maybe God knows you don't need another one. And I'm like, right. The guy who can't provide for his children definitely needs more kids than I do. And she was really critical of me as a mother. And like, she was like good at all. Like what are you talking about? You're so mean, as evidenced by what you're saying right now. And then
Sure.
she would tell me I was messing with nature by taking fertility drugs. And, but then if I expressed frustration at the fact that like my brother's not working, he just has all the time in the world to sit around getting someone pregnant, they live with you, whatever, she'd be like, babies are a blessing. Hey guys, it's me. Emotionally Unavailable is produced 100% in-house by me with no team. So if this show has ever helped you and you want to give back, subscribe to the Patreon. There's several different levels with different benefits in each. Check the show notes and you can see what each tier subscription will get you. There's also lots of fun things coming down the pipeline for the Patreon subscribers. So get in early. You can get a workbook, you can buy merch, you can do any of the things, and all of that supports the show to help it keep going. Really appreciate every single one of you. I love you so much and I can't wait to see what we continue to do together. And I'm like, right. So you're really just sticking with this God just thinks I just whatever. Okay, cool. So she was also really negative during my miscarriages. Just very like, you probably should just be glad that you didn't have that baby. And then I remember Brian's mom and a lot of other people said, at least you can get pregnant. And then after the second one, I'm like, right, but I can't stay pregnant. So that really doesn't do me any good. Really doesn't.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally get it. And it was just very isolating. I remember feeling so isolated. And it got to where, truly for me, I know this is not everyone's experience, so I don't want to like offend anyone with this. For me, I really did not carry any more pain about those losses after I successfully carried and delivered Charlie. For me, because I had just like avoided the whole thing for so long because I had no one that cared. Not even Brian, really. He really didn't. Like, I love him, but he wasn't, maybe he cared a little. I don't know. But he never really connected with the idea that this was like going to be a baby and whatever. But I just got through that so just by myself that then later, if anyone did bring it up in a sympathetic way, I was almost annoyed because I was like, no, I'm past that. But truly, having Charlie just changed it all for me. And it was just like, okay, cool. And then now with spirituality, I'm like, okay, those little souls serve their purpose. I don't know what it was, but okay, cool. But at the time, that was not my belief system. So I was like,
No.
this is very painful and I feel like a loser.
Well, it's that. And I think it is this isolation. We just don't really give people safe spaces to have conversations about tough things. And, and so it does feel kind of, isolating and scary too at the same time because there's so much uncertainty and things like that. I would say that I'm very much in the same boat as you where I really didn't once I got pregnant with David and like, had a successful pregnancy and all of those wonderful, beautiful things, and knowing that like there's no way I could have carried both babies at that point. So there was clearly like some reason for me to be this, have had that experience and have this opportunity to have this beautiful child.
Well, and was your loss early? Was your loss early?
It was pretty early, but they could never really tell me exactly how like early. And that was part of it, I think, too. The whole thing was just super, super, super mismanaged. But this situation with my hysterectomy really kind of like closed that full circle.
Yeah.
I really did connect a lot with, well, before knowing I was going to have the hysterectomy, anything like that, I started to really I'm going to use the word grieve the loss of this other child and see a lot of connections with that. And I'm sure that it has a lot to do with spirituality and the way that I kind
Absolutely. Yeah, because all this happened in your nodal reversal.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
Because if you had the hysterectomy in November, then you had been in your nodal reversal for a bit.
That makes a lot of sense. I never see, and I'm still like, that's all that stuff I'm still figuring out. But yeah, no, that totally makes a lot of sense because again, like it was definitely kind of closing a cycle for me of, having gone through this whole process again, not just as me, but like as me as a parent and as me as a child and all of all of those pieces of things and like how motherhood plays into those identities and, to talk about like what we talked about last time and stuff like that. So it's really been an interesting cycle for me, journey for me. And I'm really grateful that things went the way that they did and that, I saw the doctors that I saw and, got in with them when I could and all of the things, the same thing with my thyroid, like I'm grateful for that experience and I'm grateful for losing my voice because it helped me find it, and I needed that.
You had all of the learning that you had prior to the hysterectomy because here you are going, okay, this is a cycle. Like what is the learning that I'm supposed to take away from this rather than, because I know when I had bleeding issues, I was offered a hysterectomy actually not long before that first miscarriage. Now that I'm thinking about it, I was at work one day and I had been having weird spotting stuff and like passing just random clots. It was really like tiny little bead, like they were the size of a bead. And I would pass clots. And one day I was walking out of the bathroom and just gushed blood, like down my pants, down my leg. It was awful. And I was like, weird. And this was during my Saturn return, which is my Saturn's in Virgo. And so
I'm into the table.
It was so weird. I was like, okay, this makes sense actually in hindsight. Like then I didn't know anything about astrology, but
of course, yeah.
It was so bad. I remember I bled through a Super Plus tampon in 30 minutes and I'm like, feels like this is hemorrhaging. So I Googled it and it was like, yeah, babe, you need to get to the ER. But I was like, ER is expensive. I don't want to pay for that. So I got in with an OBGYN on an emergency basis and had to do a biopsy. They saw I had half a pint of blood in my uterus and that was not even including what I had already bled out. And so because of how much blood was in there, it was creating a shadow over the mass that they could see that was very big, but they couldn't tell me what it was because of so much blood. So I did a biopsy, ends up just being like a ovarian cyst, but had to have a surgery. And there was like a 2-week waiting period where we're waiting for the biopsy results. I'm losing my mind. And they offered a hysterectomy then, but I was like, well, my boyfriend doesn't have children, so I would like to not do that. And I'm so glad I didn't. But
sure,
it was a very scary time. Also, after that, a ton of birth control to get the bleeding to stop because they could give me samples of birth control for free because it had progesterone in it. But oh my God, I was going through hell. Like I didn't even understand how much hormones impacted me at the time. And now I know. And I'm like, oh honey, you poor little thing. But there is something that I thought of as you were talking about identity and motherhood that really came up for me because I've been hearing people talk about when they no longer bleed, where am I kind of in this universe of wombhood, And I'm like, ooh, that's such an interesting thought because I've always been so grateful to still be able to have normal regular periods at 46 because I don't want the alternate. I'm terrified of the alternate, like terrified because of how sensitive I am to hormone shifts, like terrified. And my grandma lost her fucking mind during menopause. And so I'm just really afraid I'm going to too. So I'm always like, thank God my period's here. That means no babies, no menopause. Great. But I've been thinking about that. And then I also wonder too, if our role here is to become our own best mother. And I think this is not like gender specific too. I think every 100%. Man and woman are supposed to create such safety inside every fiber of their body that they are their own best mother. I think that's how we heal your mother wound too.
Yes, absolutely.
And so in that idea, it's also like you're at the same time a child for your whole life while being your own mother. And it's such an interesting little cycle. Like it's just so synergetic and I feel such like a cozy in the womb feeling. You know what I mean? Like you're just like wrapped up in your mom's amniotic fluid whenever I think about that. And then I think so much too about just like all of the ways that we carry this ancestral trauma and how I can remember so many times that I could feel healing my mother or healing my grandmother
Mm-hmm.
because of healing I
Yes.
did for myself,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
And it really
Yes.
is so beautiful. Like,
Yes.
I hate that there are such people in the world that are so emotionally unavailable and so closed off that they can't know this feeling right now. But that's the feeling I'm always after and just
Yes.
trying to like give to others. But okay, so if you
Right.
don't mind,
Yes.
we've messaged a little about this, but I'm kind of
Sure.
curious about your background with your mom.
So my mom had a lot of challenges. We'll just leave it at that. Very strong-willed. She's a PhD in pharmacology. So my mother got her PhD while she was pregnant with me and then never got a job because she was pregnant with me. And so when she did get divorced, it's like the 90s or probably at this point, like late 80s, you know, and she's a woman and she's whatever. And so anyway,
Yes.
she busted her ass. My therapist used to call her a motherfucking gangster, which she is. I mean, she really is. And so
She handled business.
she did. So she got herself a great job, moved us to Chicago, was on 95% travel through all of my high school. And so I had a younger sister. She was 2 years younger than me. Her name is also Melissa. Go figure. She spells it differently than you. And she's a psychedelic therapist now. She's fucking badass. She did like a
Love that.
document. And so she's cool as hell. Anyway, but you know, like my mom would go to work and I was in charge of 2 teenagers all by myself. There wasn't anybody to, you know, call or to check in or whatever. And it was hard. And I, you know, I took on a lot of things that I didn't know that I did not need to take on because I was the grown daughter and I didn't have a lot of healthy role models just in general because nobody was home. And so I grew up idolizing her in what I realized after 2020 was not necessarily the healthiest way because her whole identity was around this person that she was to do the job that she needed to do to keep her kids alive. We all know how that whole thing played out, right? And so when I started going through this healing journey, I realized how entangled we were, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of enmeshment there. And now we live like about an hour away from each other and we see each other quite often. And she's a fabulous Nana to my son. And I have created a lot of boundaries over the last 4 or 5 years so that I can see her in my favorite versions of her, right? And interact with her in ways that are healthy for me and healthy for her. And when they become unhealthy for either of us, I generally have enough like wherewithal to like back out or repair or just like I would with anybody else. Because the way that I see it a lot of times is at this point, especially in a spiritual journey, like I'm the parent, right? And that goes to that mother wound too, right? Like I've become the parent figure, right? Because I am a parent and I'm doing it in a way that is different than was done with me. And I am so grateful to both of my parents for every single thing, all of the things, because I wouldn't be exactly where I am right now, which is where I really, really like being if they had not done every single thing that they did exactly the same way. And then knowing as a spiritual being that I chose them,
Well, and I was going to ask you, does that help you? Because it made such a big difference.
So
when I
much,
finally got to that place, I was like, all right, I could see why I chose y'all asses.
Absolutely, right? So much compassion and grace. And so much compassion and grace. She did so much. She does so much. And I see her and that's, it also is hard sometimes. It's hard to see people moving through their stuff without realizing that they're moving through their stuff. And you see the walls and you realize how unhealthy they are, but you also know why they're there. And so I love my mom though. I love my mom so very much. And I'm so grateful again for everything because she is such a mirror also to me too, right? For me to see like when it is. And I'm like, wait a second, is that my program or is that something that was installed in me by somebody that also had it installed in them? Because that's what it is, right? And, you know, I didn't have to live that life, like having to be on an airplane 5 days a week, you know, in pantyhose and heels and a 90s skirt, right? Dealing with these most likely imbecile men, right? Who think they know more than you because they're a man and you're a woman, even though you're the doctor in the room and they're not.
Shit nonstop, right? I'm sure.
You know, and I remember her coming home from trips and saying, you know, that she had, taken doctors out to dinner and they'd be like, oh, look, everybody's taking the secretary out. She's like, no, actually, I'm taking all of them out to dinner and here's my credit card. she's, like I said, she's a gangster. She's a
Yeah.
gangster, and a ton of respect for her and her journey. And I love that we've gotten to a place where I can have conversations with her that I couldn't have imagined having a conversation with her, a couple years ago. And to bring it full circle to my journey, when I found out about this hysterectomy last year, like, I protected my own peace with it for a long time. As far as like, as the day that I found out that I was going to have the surgery, I did tell her that same day, actually. But I was able to do it in person, which was really, I think, much better than it could have been.
Yeah.
But I protected kind of my story until then, because I knew that I could not manage my energy around it and hers and her fear of her daughter having to potentially have something, whatever, right? All these unknowns. I knew I couldn't manage her uncertainty of those unknowns, and it didn't matter, right? I didn't need her to know to move through that. And so as soon as I knew what was happening, I remember, like, I was excited. I was going to, like, see her that night and get to tell her. And I got to tell her in person, and I cried, and she didn't, like, tell me to stop crying or anything like that. And she was just so warm and so comforting and all of the things that I needed. And she was really, really great. She came, I asked her to come to my first appointment with my surgeon with me. And she's like, I have questions, but I want Liana to go first. And I was like, okay. Like, wow, I'm the grown up. Like, I get to be a grown up in my own doctor's appointment.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, again, I think the more that I do this work, the more that I understand that when I give people the space to come in as my favorite version of them, I allow them to do that. And I also allow myself to have the space to be the kind and compassionate person of grace that I want to be, if the person that I'm more familiar with, I don't want to say it that way. If something goes the way that it's gone in the past, then I can be like, wait a second, I'm acting like this is the first time,
I'm not good at this, if I'm being honest. There's a few people that I'm like, I may never get past this with them. Like, well, for instance, I've been pretty honest about, like, my dad's side of the family, like his sister and her children. And then the only remaining aunt that I have on my mom's side, I don't have any desire to ever speak to any of them again, because I'm like, yeah, they haven't changed, and there is not really a part of them that this version of me can really even connect with. Because we could talk shit, we could complain, we could just gossip in general, and that's not something I want to do. And that was pretty much the only sticking point. And, like, my dad's sister is very religious. Like, I'm sure that if she heard half of what I say, she'd be like, oh my God, the demons are coming through your podcast. Like, oh my God, like, for real, she'd be so just distraught about it. But, well, for instance, so one thing that happened is that she and her children were very harsh about my brother having a psychotic break. And his initial break was, as is typical with schizophrenia, was very religious and very, I am God. At first, he was like an archangel, and then it was like, I'm God. And she was like, your daddy would roll over in his grave. And I was like, I'm pretty sure dad would understand his fucking kid is schizophrenic. I'm pretty sure. And that just really got to me. And then even, like, it was one thing for them to mention to him, like, hey, let's go take a shower. But to sit around, like, laughing about it all as a little unit was like, why are you making fun of this, like, 23-year-old who's clearly struggling? Like, what's going on here? So things like that. And I just have no desire ever. I mean, the narcissistic shit that she did when I was a kid, I just can't get past. And then the one on my mom's side, I just don't really have anything. That got really ugly when my grandma was dying, and it just went really yucky, and I don't have any desire to talk to her. But then there's people who are still kind of in my life on a peripheral, but, like, and I try very hard to just, like, let them be them, but who they are really infringes on who I am. Like, okay, you can be you if you will stop trying to, like, bulldoze over me. And that has not happened. And I just fucking cannot. In this situation, I can sit around and, like, see things differently and have compassion and whatever. And then I get around him and I'm like, meh, 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 meh. It's awful. I hate that. But I figure this is just, like, the lesson I'm learning or something. Like, I hate this because I don't want to have that experience every time. But every time, that's kind of the experience. Like, And there's just been such horrible boundary violations and so many
Yeah.
other things that I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to move past this one. Like, you're not enjoyable to be around for longer than an hour. I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean? Like, and that's
Right.
me tolerating you for an hour. And
Sure.
I just don't have a lot of tolerance. But I have not
No.
ever, like, this isn't even, the tolerance has gotten worse since Jake, but like, I've always been pretty intolerant. Like, if
Sure.
people's personalities, if they're just a little too different than mine, I'm like, you on my nerves a little bit. You on my nerves a little bit. So they're very different than me. And it's just so hard for me. So I love that you can have so much compassion. I feel like I got that way a little with my grandma before she died, where I would just talk to her like briefly or be around her briefly because she just had her own shit. But, you know, she also was losing her fucking mind. And I don't think we really saw that until it got to a very bad place. And so I was like, oh
Yeah.
shit, so much of that could have been related to like dementia and I didn't even realize. And then I worked in hospice with people and I'd never understand. I'd be like, you know that they have Alzheimer's. Like, why is that annoying you so bad? And then it's me and I'm like, I fucking told you that already. Like, it was so bad. It was so bad. But I do think a lot of her agitation was from dementia and I didn't even catch that. But now, and I was in a real hateful place about her for so long, but really I'm not anymore because I can certainly see the struggles that she went through, that my mom went through. Like, they really were even bigger than mine. And mine were bad, but theirs were pretty bad. And I also wonder, like, how did I not marry an abusive man? Like, neither of the men that I've married, I went for the quiet guys. I love autistic boys, apparently. And I was like, oh, you're quiet and mysterious. Let me try to figure you out. Oh.
How can I fix you?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I was like, oh, you're uncomfortable. Let me make you comfortable. La, 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 la. But, like, that's one thing that I'm so happy about, that I didn't go down that road, because that would have been a very different set of issues to deal with. But though I would freeze or fawn in most conflict with a man, I've never been a man's piece a day in my life. I probably never will. I said that to someone who was saying, I can't remember how he said, he was talking about how he views respect from a woman, because it was like, how do you view respect from men? Because a lot of his conflict had been, I felt disrespected, which I see a lot with parenting too. And it's like, well, to say disrespected implies intent, and kids don't go, you know what? I don't fucking respect you. So, you know, so we were talking about that, and then he said something about, you know, respect from a woman is like she's his piece, and I was like, I ain't a man's piece, I promise you that. I want to be sometimes, but there's this part of me that's always going to be just a little bit naughty in that way.
Yeah. And what you said about respect is interesting, because I think about that a lot too. Like, you know, my son is 14, and so he's like, yeah, sometimes he's all teenager, and one night we were going for a walk, and he'd been kind of grumpy, like, before we even went for a walk, but he came anyway, and so whatever. And then he was just kind of grumpy on the walk. And I just like, let him be, like, cause I was like, oh, okay, well, he's 14. I don't have to be 14. And we got back, and I was like, so, hey, you want to go like get ice cream? And he's like, I thought you were mad at me. And I was like, why? Cause you were being 14 on our walk. And he was like, well, yeah, kind of. I was like you just like kind of were just right now. And he's like, I was like, well, luckily for you, your mom is not 14 anymore. And so I'm not mad at you. I'd like you to clean it up, but like, want to go get ice cream? Let's go do it. But, you know, like one time, I don't know, we like forgot to unload the dishwasher, or he like was just being, again, the same, whatever. And my husband was like, he's not doing what I've told him to do. I was like, oh, really? The 14-year-old's not listening? Oh,
weird.
Weird. Like, don't you remember being 14?
That is brand new information. Yes, I totally get that. Well, and that's what in unraveling like my betrayal wound and my neglect wound, respect came up in there, because I see this in so many relationships too. And I was just listening, I don't know if you've heard of this podcast, but it's called The Giggly Squad. And I fucking love them. They're like younger millennials, and it's just funny. But they were talking about how they view love as somebody going, that person probably, like, let's say they cooked dinner. That person made dinner. They're probably stressed and whatever. I'll take a load off and help them wash the dishes. And I'm like, sis, you were just talking about the patriarchy. And that is very much part of the patriarchy, because we as little girls, boys weren't taught that. They weren't taught to caretake for everyone around them. Girls were. And so I'm like, that's a patriarchal system when you're like, let me think of someone else ahead of myself, because nobody wants to get up and do the dishes afterwards. Now, if you're in a dinner, I'm not saying you should never do that. You know, your friends having a dinner party, yeah, help clean up and whatever. But just the mere thought that if somebody cares about me, which, by the way, this was my thinking for lots of years. If you cared about me, you would do this. And I'm like, no, you only do that because you spent a lot of years hypervigilant, making sure that you were walking on eggshells, pre-understanding anything that could possibly happen or go wrong so that you could circumvent it. I still do this with my children. It's one of the ways that I do is like, let's make sure that you have every last thing that you need for in the morning right now so that I don't have to deal with the discomfort of your attitude in the morning. You know what I'm saying? But it's all the same thing. It really is. It's all codependency. It's all part of the patriarchy. But when can we step out and look at the bigger picture and go, okay, respect? What is respect? Like, truly, what is respect? Just like I had to learn, like, just because I'm feeling betrayed doesn't actually mean you betrayed me. Because that was a weird one for me, feeling it every fucking day. Some little thing, and I'd be like, what? And it was such a landmine. Like, my poor husband was constantly just like, is this going to be the thing that sets you off? And I think he's still scared of me a little bit in that way because... You know, there is still sometimes when I'm very good now at like collecting my shit before I like, you know, because I'm like, I can feel that triggered me very quickly. Let me not just, you know, but I'm much more understanding of like, oh, wow, that is still such a big wound. Like I'm able to work through those feelings so much faster. But then neglect is a really big one. Anytime I feel overwhelmed with a task and he's not here, I'm like, nobody fucking ever here to help me. And I always got to do shit on my own. And it's just, to me, that's the same thing as respect. It's like, why are we equating the fact that a kid forgot to do something or that they're not quote unquote helping with things? What does that have to do with respect? That's a legitimate question. I feel like people need to answer for themselves. And where did you learn that that's how you show up in a family system? And there's nothing wrong inherently with asking a child to do chores or whatever.
Absolutely. Right.
But like, where's the motivation coming from? You know?
Right.
And I also think that so many people just believe that this one thing is the only way to make kids more responsible, or like, you know, you not being mad, let alone showing mad when he was grumpy on a walk. Some people would be like, and that's why XYZ. And I'm like, no, like sometimes, and no one's ever said this, but I think about this sometimes where like for a while after Jake died, I didn't necessarily like talk about parenting a whole lot because I kind of was like, well, who the fuck's going to take parenting advice from me? Like my kid is dead, you know? But then I was like, well, it really wasn't the me of the last couple of years like that. And I wouldn't take any of that back. Like I wish I'd understand what a Libra moon needed. I wish I'd understood that my little constant shit bitching with my husband or about my job or whatever was really just really harmful for his little spirit because he didn't like conflict. And I wish I'd understood like his ADHD really did prevent him from keeping a very like clean, aesthetically pleasing room, but that he really did need that. He needed that for grounding and safety. Like he needed aesthetics and he needed good smells and just, you know, those are the things. Like me being a psycho when he was little is the shit I regret. Not the last couple of years where some people thought I gave him way too much slack. And I'm like, because I didn't shame him for being a person who was going through some shit. No, I don't regret a single fucking second. I wouldn't take any of that back. I'm so happy for the last 2 years of his life. He got a mom who was just so unconditionally loving of him. I'm so glad he got that. And it's not that I wasn't always, but I was, like I said, doing all these other things that just hurt his little spirit. And he was such a little tender guy and he needed somebody more calm. Again, spirituality helps me because I'm like, well, he fucking chose that shit. And those were his struggles and that, you know, and I saw a medium who was like, he's saying this was his time. And I'm like, I believe that. I really do. Yeah. I believe that that was always going to be his exit. So that helped me. But now I'm like, you guys, it's not me not kicking him out of my house when he got in legal trouble or, any of that stuff that did this. It's not
It's all
that.
the
It's
tough.
the shit
Everyone wants to think like tough love is like how we, because that's what
Yes.
everyone's always done forever.
Oh,
And
it's
like,
always the tough
right?
love. Yeah. Well, and I saw somebody on Facebook. I don't remember if this was before he died or right after, but somebody was saying, y'all said do tough love. I did it. And then whoever it was in their family died. And now that's something that they have to live with. And I'm like, I think if a person wants to change, they'll change. I don't think tough love or not tough love is the answer. I think you got to do what
No,
feels good for your
right,
spirit and your
right. You're
boundaries and how you want to show up. But like
absolutely
struggling with addiction isn't a morality issue. So,
no,
and then it
no,
affects the whole family
100%.
system. So everybody's going through
Right.
it together,
Yes, absolutely. Well, so a couple interesting things in there. I mean, lots of interesting things in there, but like, I think one about respect, like I think about that a lot again, like with these interactions. Like I had a situation one day where I showed up at temple and someone's like, where's David? And I was like, he didn't come today. And they're like, why not? And I was like, he was cranky when I was leaving. And I was like, forget it. I'm out, And he was like, well, who's the mom? I'm like, me. And I get to decide when I'm going to protect my peace and not drag a hormonal teenager
Right.
to the thing I want to go to just because he should or whatever. Like,
Right.
my conscience is clean. I'm the mom. I made that choice. I was like, I see you and I don't want to hang out with you right now. So bye.
Go keep your ass in bed.
And also, so I think that respect comes from authority. So one of the things when I was going through this journey, and I was feeling like a lot of anger, like we do when we're first, especially I think at the beginning stages of this process, there is a lot of anger, this like, and some of it's like legitimate rage, and everything too, right? And that's a whole another conversation. But I was on a trip with a friend of mine who had known me for over 20 plus years. And she said, Liana, your anger is eating you alive. It's literally burning you alive. And so I started looking into that. And one of the first things that I remember finding was that the opposite of, because that was like when I was first starting to think about like spectrums and like these, this duality type of idea and all these kinds of things, right? And so the opposite spectrum from anger, I was told, was authority. And I was like, and in my mind, authority was anger, right? Because again, like that's how we were raised, right? Like you do it because I said so. And respect is because I'm your parent or I'm your elder or I'm your boss.
Being
Or
elder.
whatever, right? So, and so I think with all that said, what I find is that as I do more of my inner child stuff and look into some of these sources of this anger or places where maybe I had anger and buried it or whatever the situation was, that when I'm coming into a situation that I want respect and authority in, if I am trying to get authority and my inner teenager is the one driving the bus, she is only trying to get really somebody to see her.
Yeah.
And validate her power, I'll say, or yeah, I think that's probably it, right? Versus a parent who's like, I'm in charge, regardless of whether or not you're a cranky teenager or whatever. And if you want to like continue to be a cranky teenager, I can continue to engage with you as a cranky teenager. But at some point, both of us are going to end up as cranky teenagers. And then this isn't going to go anywhere. But I'm also the parent and I can be like, you know what? I see this and I don't have to participate. Bye.
Right.
I'll come back. Like I could come back. And that again, probably some people could see as, like letting them off the hook or all these things, but it doesn't have to do with that. It has to do with coming back at a different space when you're both in different spaces and being like, look, like here's the situation. Let's talk about this now that we're not both in our stuff. To like, nobody's going to deal with something healthily or well when we're both in our stuff. And then I start to see all these, interactions and different things like in my family growing up or like in different places where I'm like, well, that's why that didn't work out. Like all of us were just like angry 16-year-olds, like trying to, I'm in charge. Right. And so, I think it's just about, it's about recognizing where authority again is trying to kind of come from. And then the other thing was actually that one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about tonight, because I find this concept interesting. And, like I said, there wasn't a lot of people. I've had grief in my life. Like we've all had grief in our lives, but like you've lost, like family members and things like that. And like those things for me, like I have, I think I even said it on the other thing. Like when I think about some of this stuff, I'm like, everybody was already dead, right? Like the grandparents were dead. Like there wasn't anybody for me to lose in this lifetime yet. And also that when I start to think more about spirituality, this idea that that we have these soul families, we have these groups of people. And if all of us were here in the physical, how would we get the help that we need? To have the pathway, to have the openings, to have the space, to have whatever experiences we're supposed to have, we need that non-physical assistance. And the non-physical assistance comes from our love wound, which is the grief, right? Of like, whether it's not having the relationship or losing the relationship or whatever these things are, but that's what creates the space for us to create something new and different within that space. And that's like transmuting and, emotional release. And that's why all these, what are the words I want to use? Techniques, that's not modalities, I guess, are so helpful in like trying to navigate you through different types of emotional distress, I guess, for lack of better, words.
Yeah. There is so much out there. I feel like it's funny to watch like the phases of spiritual growth. And because like mine started with the idea that I was trying too hard to become somebody else. But then the next thing was like, okay, self-love. And then victim consciousness. Somewhere in there was even Christ consciousness, because I was like, oh, I kind of get what he was saying as a human now. Okay, like it's been bastardized, but I get it. Okay, cool. And then there was like oneness and whatever. So you've got all these like spiritual planes to deal with. And yes, like learning how to connect with your guides, and which I'm not great at. But then there's the psychology portion of things too, where it's like, first I learned about my wounding. Then I learned how to know which wound was triggered. Then I had to learn how to soothe myself when each wound was triggered. And then I got to a place where I'm like, I'm still analyzing and intellectualizing by doing that. Okay, so now I can just stay with an emotion without even like naming it. I don't have to name it. I can literally just be in my body. And I don't remember who I was talking to the other day. The lady that was before the one that you were like, oh, you guys really liked each other or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, you're explaining this exactly like I picture it. Cause like I picture being embodied, just like all of a sudden my soul re-enters me, and how before I was separated from all of that, which trauma does, and pain that you're trying to protect yourself from separates you from who you really are at your core. And I think being embodied for me really has helped me to connect with the idea of oneness and just like seeing people, but even like learning my own wounding. Cause then I started talking to people and I'm like, you got the same shit. You got the same shit. Like all of us were the same. Like it's so easy to hear people's wounding when they talk. So just seeing like, wow, we really are all the same. And then I was like, that's what Jesus was saying, is like, we're all this piece of this one thing. Like I was just getting it, but there is psychology there too, in that like I am using the most basic attachment wounds to describe my wounding. And so like, yes, there's that. But yeah, I think just learning how to be your own best mom. I mean, that was a phase like where you've heard me talk about it a lot, like having to coddle the shit out of myself and just getting to a place where I'm like really okay with that. And yes, the anger, and I don't think I was aware, because most of my rage in the beginning came from little me, who was like, you guys really fucked up. Like, really fucked up. You really fucked up so bad. And I wanted so badly to move past it. And it wasn't until I was like, guess what? We both know resistance keeps us stuck. Let's just say we're fucking mad and stay mad. As long as you need to be mad.
Right.
And then it will go when it wants to go. And it did. It was amazing. But it was just one day on a podcast episode. She said the one thing that my little heart needed, and that was it. I haven't been mad at my grandma a day since then, because it just went. That was it. It was gone then. I saw myself in her was truly what happened. I was like,
absolutely.
I understand how you did this now.
Right.
That's and I love the shit out of myself, and I'm not going to hate myself for the shit I've done. So it being able to extend that to myself, I was finally able to extend it to her, and was it. It just left. And yes, I have felt forever like my mom guiding me and helping me, and how integral she really has been to help me with having a daughter. Even though, I mean, she sucked at having a daughter bad because she
But that's
had
just
her
about
own
hindsight
shit.
and like perspective, right?
Yes, like she was so bad at having a daughter, but I could tell, like even then I knew she wanted so badly to be different.
Sure.
She just struggled with addiction. It just changes who you are. And she didn't ever learn any of the skills. She tried. But then I think about too, like how I did all of this learning and how like learning but integrating it is so hard. Like that transition where you first have to be like, I guess we got to start practicing this if we actually want to be able to do it. Like that was a big lesson early on in the podcast because I was just like still wailing all the time because nothing was going my way. And I just sat there and was like, so you're saying as long as I give a level 10 reaction to every little thing that happens, I'm going to continue to get every little thing. So I was like, you know what? I don't even care that this is happening then. Fine. I don't care. And as I like just sat there with that, I like literally stopped caring and was like, honey, I mean, for real though, it always like gets fixed eventually. And then you've just spent 2 hours, like those early recordings, my voice would be so raw from crying beforehand because something was going wrong. I was so stupid. I would just be I'd be like, ah! But I was crying a lot at the time anyway, because I just had no skills to deal with anything. And I was just coming out of a really severe mental health crisis. So I was crying all the time because it's the only thing I knew how to do to regulate. So for the first time, my kids were fucking scared because I'm just copious amounts of tears, like all the time. Just, ah. So it's funny to listen to those episodes because I'm like, damn, girl, your voice was all rough and just like scratchy. But I mean, it was such a good lesson because I was like, okay, damn, the tech issue got solved without you losing your shit.
Right.
Look at that. So integration's been really interesting. Yeah. And then also we've talked so much about like how the pattern comes back around, the cycle comes back around, and now I've got a deeper understanding of it. But I get so like excited when I can name it and go, shit, that was that one thing again. Okay, okay.
Yeah. Because here's where the practice comes in. And, you know, you said it a couple times and I meant to say it before, like about nurturing like that inner baby. And I think about that like so often. I have like pictures of myself and everybody hung up all over the place. And I send a lot of like love and gratitude to like baby pictures of like me or my husband, or like his mom was like passed away and he didn't have a good relationship with her, but like I like carried around a picture of like her and him, like when he was like in the hospital, like just sending them both love, like the week that she was passing. And like, you know, again, like just understanding that even if those people didn't do all the things like we think they should have done when we were whatever, it's like recognizing that like I'm here now and I get to make different choices about all kinds of things, like how I do it and also how I interact with the people that did whatever the thing was. And also give them lots of compassion and grace for just not knowing any better, because you only know if you know. And you have to like fuck up usually to figure out that you fucked up, right?
It was really hard for me to give myself that compassion. Like I really went through a grieving period of like what my life could have been like for myself and my children had I known this sooner. I really had to get off of that and understand deeply and like innately that like that wasn't when you were supposed to get the knowledge, or you would have gotten it. It all came to you at the time that it was meant to. Funny enough, my spiritual awakening, you know, I'm an Aries rising. My spiritual awakening happened during eclipse season on the Aries Libra axis. So when it was all in my first house, 1st and 7th, everything just changed. And so it was right before it moved into, the nodes moved into Pisces and Virgo, but it was wild. I was like getting the exact information I needed right at the right time. And of course, there's always that longing for what could have been a little. Like, it's not like I live in that place, but it comes up and I just like welcome it and just be like, and you're right, it would have been nice. It would have been nice if you had had that information earlier. It would have been. But
now I have it now, and how am I going to
and who's to say it would have changed anything? You know, like, we don't get to make those decisions either. So
nope, we don't.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what are you doing in the online space right now?
So I have TikTok, Laughing with Liana, Liana. I am not consistent about putting stuff there. I want to do more content, but I feel like my tagline there is Laughing with Liana, and I do videos by myself. And then I'm like, I'm laughing by myself. So like I don't know. I had to figure something out with that.
You're probably feeling the same call we all are, which is to community right now.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, no, 100%. So I created this laughter program all year pretty much. I've been working on it since January on and off, and I've presented it twice officially in July, and it was super fun. I've got a lot of more work to do with it and a lot more, I don't know, there's so many different directions I can go with it, so many different things I can do. So I'm leaning into that and trying to figure out what my next step is with that. But I also have a son starting high school tomorrow. So like, it's like one life event at a time kind of a thing. And I know like as fine timing, everything's going to happen the way it happens, and I'll find the right next thing or whatever. But so I also have an Instagram. I just don't like Instagram that much. So I'm not in there that often. But again, I love making content. I love having conversations like this just about the journey that I've been through and what spirituality means to me and how I make everything in my life reflect sort of what that journey has been like for me and how I bring more of it into my life every day or people around me, and just excited to do life with the way that life is doing with me. Like, I mean, I've been saying it for the last couple of years, but like, if this is as good as it gets, like, okay, cool. I can ride this out. Like, this is great. And so I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for all of the experiences, all of the ups and downs, all of the different paths that it's led me and the people that it's introduced me to and bringing me to you and just all of that. I mean, again, this is as good as it gets, then what's the best that could happen? This is great.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you were here today. I'm glad the audience got to meet you. I love our new friendship.
Yes.
And I'm excited to see what else we end up doing together.
For sure. Absolutely. Haven't heard last thing.
Absolutely not. All right. I am going to press stop if you will hang out a sec.
Thanks for coming to Emotionally Unavailable. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share.
Emotionally unavailable.
All right, that's it from me. So make sure that you check out the show notes for links. And until next time, let's all just keep swimming.
INDEPE and cut.